Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the WBA Mid-Year Champions Report, as this is the third edition of the Champions Report for the for the year of 2024. On the Mid-Year Champions Report, though, we get a little bit more in depth, a little bit more details, and I also give bold predictions for each title from 122 to heavyweight and the guy holding the belt. For the rest of the year. So now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So the WBA title, we still have three current WBA regular champions that are holding secondary belts, so I will discuss them as well. And we're going to start with the 122-pound super bantamweight title, which is currently held by the reigning undefeated WBA and undisputed super bantamweight champion Naoya Inoue, the Monster. So Inoue returned in May and made a mandatory defense against his WBC mandatory challenger and former two-time world champion Luis Nery. And in shocking turn of events, Nery would put Inoue down for the first time in his career in the first round. But Inoue battled back, scored two big knockdowns, and knocked him down in the second and third round, broke him down, and then brutally knocked him out in the sixth round to retain all four of his belts. Now, it was expected that Inoue was going to make another mandatory defense against WBA mandatory challenger and former unified champ Marajan Akhmadaliev, also known as MJ. And surprisingly, Inoue's side, I don't know if they've officially declined the mandatory order, but after the order was made, there was a lot of talks that they were declining or are declining the order, and that Inoue was more interested in fighting former champion TJ Doheny of Australia. And then there's also been news that Sam Goodman, who is his IBF and WBO mandatory challenger, that he could be possibly next. And then also Nakatani, the WBC bantamweight champ at 118, who's undefeated, is an option. But a lot of people are thinking that's more of an option for later in the year, like in December, which is a huge month of boxing for Japan. So for Nakatani, for Inoue, he's got a choice to make for September, and I don't know if he's going to hold on to his WBA belt. That's the big issue here. That is the most likely title to be stripped from him, and then MJ would be able to fight for the vacant belt. Now we got to wait to see who it's against, and all that stuff. But and I'm really not sure. I think, though, Inoue should fight MJ. I think he's the best fighter in terms of what he's proven to date, or Sam Goodman, his other mandatory. But I would rather him fight MJ because the WBA belt is next. If he moves on to fight Sam Goodman next, because he's another mandatory challenger, I don't believe the WBA will let him hold on to that belt. I think they're going to strip him if that happens. Now, if he were to fight Nakatani, which I don't think he will, or TJ Doheny next, maybe the WBA will allow an optional defense as long as he fights MJ in December, but I don't think that's how it's going to go. So for me, I'm really up in the air on what he's going to do. I hope he fights MJ next, but I would not mind him fighting Sam Goodman. But Doheny, in my opinion, is a waste of time. I know he's popular in Japan because of when he won his world title back in 2019, it was by a controversial decision over Japanese fighter Ryosuke Iwasa, and that took place in Japan. And I know he's fought out there his last couple fights and got victories, so he's become somewhat popular, but I don't even have Doheny in my top 10. Since he won his title in 2019, he lost it to Danny Roman in a unification bout. He fought well. He's lost to Ionut Baluta, who's in my top 10. And he's also lost to Michael Conlon, and he just hasn't, and he's also lost to Sam Goodman. So I don't see, and that was just last year, so I don't see why Doheny would be an option for Inoue unless it was a vastly bigger money fight than MJ or Goodman. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully by the next Champions Report, I'm making a prediction on the locked-in fight that he's going to have in September. So that's it. Next, the featherweight championship at 126 pound is now current. Well, coming into the year, the title was vacant. Then Otabek Kolmatov was signed up to fight Raymond Ford for the vacant belt. And in early March, these two guys would lock up. Kolmatov was out working Ford, but Ford was having his moments. And then Kolmatov started to slow down in the championship rounds, and Ford jumped on him and really put the pressure on and started landing big shots. He knocked Kolmatov down and then pressed him, and with only seconds left in the fight, he would stop Otabek Kolmatov impressively in the 12th round to capture the vacant WBA featherweight championship of the world. Then on June 1st, Raymond Ford would sign up for the 5 versus 5 card as part of Matchroom to defend his title for the first time against Nick Ball. Ford, although he took this more for the money side of it, because what he really wanted to do was fight. What his original plans were was to fight was to move up to 130 pounds and vacate the belt. He didn't do that. He fought Nick Ball. It was a very good, spirited matchup, back and forth, that Nick Ball would take a close split decision and become the new WBA featherweight champion of the world. So now Nick Ball is your new champion. We haven't heard exactly what he's going to do next. I don't believe he's in mandatory mode because the mandatory fight took place in March, and I want to say most of these guys have a year to make a mandatory defense. But we'll see what the WBA decides to do. But I really believe Nick Ball's going to be able to do what he wants in his next fight. I wouldn't be surprised if he returns on like the Bivol Better Be of undercard. And I'm hoping that there's going to be talks of a potential unification bout. I think Rafael Espinosa is going to be off the table because I think he's going to fight Robeisy Ramirez next. And then I think I'm hoping that Luis Alberto Lopez, the reigning IBF champion, would be an option, even though Lopez is fighting August 10th. Maybe it could be an option later in the year as long as Lopez could fight. If not, I like a fight with say Joet Gonzalez would be a good one, a former world title challenger. I just want to see Nick Ball, because he's an exciting fighter, get back to boxing. Or get back in the ring following this victory here over Raymond Ford. But of course he deserves some time off. I just hope we see him fight before the end of the year, and I think we will. Hopefully by the next Champions Report we have more info on Nick Ball. 130 super featherweight. The champion there is Lamont Roach Jr. Entering the year, he hasn't defended his title yet. Earlier in the year it was talked that he had 2 mandatory defenses to make, and then he didn't fight either one of those guys. He returned on June 15th, June 28th, I'm sorry, so he did just fight, and he took on some unknown undefeated fighter named Feargal McCrory of Ireland, and picked him apart, dominated him, and stopped him in the 8th round to retain his title. So now, it's unknown if he is going to be ordered to make the 2 mandatories. Personally, I feel like the WBA, if they were going to allow him to make an optional defense, why didn't they just have the 2 mandatories fight each other? But I'm not sure what's going to happen with the WBA. I do believe he's going to have to make a mandatory defense, and I think Lamont Roach is talented enough to hold on to his belt throughout the end of the year. But we'll see what happens. So hopefully by the next Champions Report, we have an idea of the direction that Roach is going in for his next fight. Next is the 135-pound lightweight title, which is held by undefeated reigning champion Gervonta Tank Davis. Tank defended his title officially for the first time as the lone WBA lightweight champ. He was the regular champ until Devin Haney forfeited the super title back in November, and now Davis returned on June 15th in the main event of an Amazon Prime pay-per-view card to take on undefeated Frank Martin. Martin was out boxing Tank, but Tank just kept getting closer and closer and setting up the big shots. I had Martin up 5 rounds to 2 heading into the 8th round, and then Tank landed a monster uppercut that hurt Martin badly, and then a straight left hand that put him out cold. and Gervonta Tank Davis retained his WBA lightweight championship. Now, before that fight, Tank had been talking about Lomachenko, and since that fight, in the week since, Bob Arum has confirmed that both sides are having respectful conversations for a potential unification bout with Vasily Lomachenko. I'm really hoping that happens. I think it will happen, and I hope that's what takes place before the end of the year between these two guys, because that's an exciting-ass fight. It's going to be the biggest fight of Tank's career if he gets it going, and he's going to unify belts, which is huge. So I'm really, really hoping that that's what happens right there for Tank Davis next. Hopefully by the next championship report, we have official, at least we are getting closer, and these two sides have almost worked out a deal or finalized the deal by the end of August. We'll see what happens. Next, 140 junior welterweight. Entering the year, Rolly Romero was the champion. He was allowed at the end of March to make an optional defense against Isaac Cruz, who was moving up from lightweight. Most people thought Romero was going to win the fight, but Cruz went out there and dominated Romero, broke him down and stopped him in the 8th round, put him down multiple times to capture the 140-pound junior welterweight WBA title. Now Cruz is returning to fight Jose Valenzuela on the August 3rd card. And I'm going to tell you right now, do not be surprised if Jose Valenzuela wins that fight. That's going to be an interesting-ass fight. It's on the Terrence Crawford, Israel Madrimov, August 3rd, Amazon Prime pay-per-view card. Big fight right there. And for Cruz, that he should not be overlooking. And I'm really excited to see that fight. It's going to be good. August 3rd on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. I'm making my prediction right now. I'm picking Jose Valenzuela to upset Isaac Cruz and knock him out to become the new WBA champion. And then he might have to make a mandatory defense later on in the year, but we'll see what goes down with that. 147 welterweight is the first division that we're discussing that has two champions. You have the super champion, which is Terrence Bud Crawford, and then you have the regular champion, which is undefeated Imantas Stanionis. Now, Crawford has already made his decision that he's moving to 154 to challenge Israel Madrimov next on August 3rd. We'll get to that in a minute. So he's moving up to 154. Now, if he is successful at 154, what I believe is going to happen is Crawford will forfeit his title or be named champion in recess by the welterweight division, and Imantas Stanionis is going to be upgraded to full champion. Stanionis returned after a 2-year layoff on the Canelo Munguia undercard and took on some guy named Gabriel Maestre and scored a convincing 12-round unanimous decision to retain his regular belt. I think he's going to be upgraded to full champion, and then after that, he might have to make a mandatory, or it might have to make a mandatory, but I definitely believe he's going to return before the end of the year. I think his best option would be a potential unification bout with WBC champion Mario Barrios. But Barrios looks like he could be fighting Manny Pacquiao, the returning legend, later in the fall. That's been discussed. The WBC has already said they would sanction such a bout. So we'll see. We'll see what goes down. But I hope it's going to, I hope Stanionis and Barrios can get together. But I honestly like Manny Pacquiao, and I wouldn't mind seeing Pacquiao return to fight for that belt. So we'll see what Stanionis does, but I do believe he's going to be upgraded to full champ, and then defend his title one more time later this year, hopefully on a big card like potentially the October Fundora Errol Spence undercard would be good. We'll see though. Next, we look at the 154-pound super welterweight title. Entering the year, the title was, I'm not sure if Charlo had vacated the belt just yet. If he didn't, he was still champion, but then the belt went vacant. No, yeah, he was still champion entering the year, and then he vacated the belt about a week or two prior to Israel Madrimov fighting Magomed Kurbanov. Two undefeated Russian fighters were getting ready to line up against each other and fight each other on the March 8th Joshua and Nagano undercard. So the WBA scrambled quickly and allowed and made this a vacant title fight between Magomed Kurbanov and Madrimov. Kurbanov actually came in a slight favorite, but Madrimov broke him down and dominated him and stopped him in only 4 rounds to capture his first world title. So it was a big win for Madrimov. And then Madrimov got even better news that he, August 3rd, will defend his title against the undefeated former 2-division undisputed champion, Terrence Bud Crawford, who's still the unified welterweight champ and is going to be making his debut at 154. And what Crawford is hoping is going to be a prelude to a showdown with Canelo Alvarez later this year, early next year. But Crawford moving up to 154 to fight for this title here is a big deal. He's also fighting for an interim title against Madrimov. This is a good fight. It's going to headline an August 3rd Amazon Prime pay-per-view card. My prediction is that Crawford will beat Madrimov. I think Madrimov might go the distance, though. And Crawford will beat him, though, and capture a championship in a 4th weight class and push forward towards something bigger, either becoming undisputed at 154 or Canelo later in the year. I think he will hold on to this belt after that. We'll get more into that, though, later on. But Crawford, Madrimov, August 3rd, Amazon Prime pay-per-view in the main event. And it's a really good card also. 160, middleweight. That title is currently held by Arislandi Lara. Lara returned and made his first official middleweight title defense of the full title when he took on mandatory challenger Michael Zarafa of Australia and dominated him, stopping him in just 2 rounds to retain his title. That was on the March 30th Amazon Prime pay-per-view debut card. And Lara looked good in that fight. He's been linked to potential unification bouts, a potential unification bout with Carlos Adames. They're both with the PBC. Adames just retained the full WBC belt with a victory over Terrell Gausha, and there's a lot of talks about those 2 guys. The only thing that would ruin a unification is Adames has also been linked to a potential showdown with Janabek Alamanhalai. And Bob Arum wants to make that unification bout between those 2 fighters if Tank Davis and Vasily Lomachenko sign on for their unification bout of the lightweight titles. If that fight happens by the end of the year, I think the desired undercard is a Top Rank versus PBC card, and Janabek is with Top Rank and Adames is with the PBC, so that would be a bit bigger for the middleweight division and bigger all around. So it's going to depend. I hope Lara, though, does at least return before the end of the year, and I hope it's against a legitimate middleweight fighter, but we'll see what happens and go from there. Next, we are going to look at the 168-pound super middleweight title, which 2 men hold credit to that world title. First, you have the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. He's the super champion of the WBA. That is Canelo Alvarez. Then you have the regular champion, undefeated David Morrell Jr. Now, Canelo returned in May, put his 4 belts on the line, and defeated Jaime Munguia in an all-Mexican showdown. A good competitive bout. Canelo put him down early, outworked him, scored a convincing but hard-fought unanimous decision to retain all 4 belts. Now Canelo is set to return likely in September, although it could be a later date. And now it's looking like Chris Eubank Jr. of the United Kingdom has become the front runner to land the fight. We had originally heard that Edgar Berlanga was the front runner, and also that Jamal Charlo was still in the mix. But now Chris Eubank Jr., just as of today, has been linked as the new front runner for that for Canelo. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully by the next Champions Report, I am making a prediction on Canelo's finalized bout and who it's against. We'll see. Now, David Morrell Jr., the regular champ at 168, we know that he is set to return on the August 3rd Crawford Madrimov undercard, where he is going to make his light heavyweight debut at 175 to take on Hot Rod Kalajic, former world title challenger at light heavyweight. This is a big fight right here for Morrell as he chases the bigger fights himself, chases David Benavidez to 175. A win over Hot Rod Kalajic makes him a serious contender at 175. So I'm going to be interested to see if he wins that fight, which I'm predicting him to win that fight, but if he returns to 168 to defend that title, that regular belt at 168, because he's really not going to get Canelo. I mean, let's be honest. So does he return to 168 to defend that title, or does he just let it go? We'll see what happens. Hopefully by the next Champions Report at the end of August, we have a bit of clear direction on what Morrell is doing with the regular belt at 168. Next is the 175-pound light heavyweight title, which is currently held by the undefeated, reigning, longtime WBA champion, Dimitri Bivol. Bivol was supposed to face off in an undisputed title clash, a unification bout, against unified champ Artur Beterbiev on June 1st. That fight was postponed due to an injury. He ended up fighting some undefeated guy instead and scored his first knockout in years to retain his title. I can't remember the guy's name, I apologize. But a 6-round TKO, retained his belt, and then just after that victory on June 1st, it was announced that his postponed fight was rescheduled for October. So Bivol and Beterbiev will collide for undisputed in October from Saudi Arabia. Can't wait to see that. I will give my prediction on that fight, my official prediction on that fight at the next Champions Report. Stay tuned for that. Next is the 200-pound Cruiserweight Championship, which entering the year, undefeated Arslan Goulamirian was the champion, but hadn't fought in nearly 2 years by the time he defended the belt against Gilberto Ramirez. I think it was 2 years or a year and a half, actually. Gilberto Ramirez in April challenged for the title, or no, late March, he challenged for the title against Goulamirian, outworked Goulamirian in a tough battle, and scored an impressive 12-round unanimous decision to become the new world champion. Now it's been rumored that Chris Billam-Smith and Gilberto Ramirez are trying to work out a deal for a title unification bout later this year. I'm excited about that because I think it's a really good matchup right there. I'm kind of bummed because I'd rather see both of them fight Jai Opetaia, but it's a good way for them to leverage a big fight with Opetaia early next year for undisputed cruiserweight supremacy. Opetaia is the IBF champion. So I'm really hoping this fight gets made. Billam-Smith just fought in June and defeated Richard Riakporhe in a good bout. So I think it probably doesn't get made until like maybe October at the earliest. I'm leaning more towards November, December area. But I do believe this is who Ramirez is going to fight. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully by the next Champions Report at the end of August, I have details on this fight. And then finally, the heavyweight championship is held again by 2 different fighters. First, you have the undefeated and now former 2-division undisputed champion, Alexander Usyk. He's still the unified heavyweight champ. He holds the super heavyweight WBA belt. He returned on May 18th and took on Tyson Fury in a 4-belt undisputed title unification bout and defeated the undefeated WBC champion Fury by a hard-fought 12-round split decision in a true classic bout where he almost knocked Fury out in the 9th round, handed him his first loss. After that, it was announced that, we already knew the loser of the bout would have an automatic rematch clause, and Fury ended up being the loser, so he activated that clause and signed on to fight Alexander Usyk in a rematch. So that fight's taking place December 21st on pay-per-view from Saudi Arabia. So the WBA title, super title, Usyk will defend his unified belt as he's no longer undisputed champion because he gave up the IBF title against Fury in a rematch. So we know that's happening. The regular belt is held by Mahmoud Char. Char was reinstated as champion because he took some legal action happened to where he was supposed to get a mandatory shot against Trevor Bryan when he was champion, and instead Trevor Bryan fought Daniel Dubois. So some legal action took place where Char was reinstated as regular champion. He was supposed to fight former 2-time world title challenger Kubrat Pulev. That fight got postponed. He's still supposed to make that defense against Pulev. Hopefully by the next Champions Report we find out what's going on with that and what happens. So that's it on the current WBA champions from 122 to 200, or to heavyweight. Now I'm going to make my bold predictions on each belt and let you know if I think the current champion will still be champion by the end of the year. We start with the 122-pound super bantamweight champion, and that is undisputed kingpin Naoya Inoue of Japan, the Monster. Do I believe he ends this year as champion? My answer is no. I think he's going to move forward with either Doheny or Sam Goodman for September and vacate the WBA title, and then Mirajan Akhmadaliev will fight for the vacant belt, likely win it, and I think he'll end the year as your WBA super bantamweight champion of the world. We'll see. 126 featherweight, Nick Ball's your current champion. Will he end the year as the WBA featherweight champion of the world? My answer, yes. I think he will defend his title one more time. It'll be against a solid, decent opponent, but somebody beatable, and I don't think he's going to get a unification bout. I think he wins, though, and retains his WBA belt by the end of the year. Next, 130 super featherweight, the reigning champion there. The current champion is Lamont Roach Jr. Will he still be the champion at the end of the year? My answer is yes. I think he's going to make one of his mandatory defenses. I believe he wins that mandatory defense and retains his belt. 135 lightweight, the current champion is undefeated Gervonta Tank Davis. Will he still be champion by the end of the year? My answer, no. I think he is going to fight Vasily Lomachenko, and I believe he loses for the first time in his career to Vasily Lomachenko in a title unification bout, and Vasily Lomachenko ends the year as the WBA and unified lightweight champion of the world. 140 junior welterweight, Isaac Cruz is your current champion. I believe, or will he end the year as the champion? My bold prediction, no. Jose Valenzuela on August 3rd is going to beat and knock out Isaac Cruz and capture the WBA junior welterweight title at 140. After that, I believe Valenzuela could fight Ishmael Barroso before the end of the year. It depends on the outcome of the fight and how much Valenzuela has to work. But I'm leaning towards Valenzuela ends the year as your WBA junior welterweight champ at 140. 147 welterweight. Current champions are super champion Terrence Crawford and regular champion Imantas Stanionis. Will these two guys still be champions by the end of the year? First answer, my bold prediction, Terrence Crawford will not be. He will move to 154 and become champion at 154 and vacate his title, give up his super title. Imantas Stanionis, will he still be regular champion at the end of the year? No, because he is going to be upgraded to the official and only WBA world champion, and then will defend his title again and retain it, and will end the year as the lone WBA welterweight champion of the world at 147. 154 super welterweight. The current champion is undefeated Ismail Madrimov. Will he end the year as the champion at 154? My bold prediction, no. Terrence Crawford is moving to 154 to fight him on August 3rd and will defeat him to capture the WBA super welterweight title at 154, and he will end the year with that title in hand at 154 pounds. 160 middleweight. The current middleweight champion is Erislandy Lara. Will he end the year as the middleweight champion of the world for the WBA? My bold prediction, yes. I think, honestly, if Lara gets Carlos Adames in the ring, I think he beats him, to be honest, even at 40. And secondly, if he fights somebody else, I don't think whoever they put in front of him, I don't think he's going to lose. I think he retains that title. Erislandy Lara is still champ at the end of the year. Next, 168 super middleweight. We have two champions. Super champion is Canelo Alvarez. Regular champion is David Morrell Jr. First, will Canelo Alvarez end the year as the super champion? My bold prediction, yes. I think Canelo's going to fight Chris Eubank Jr. in September. I think he will defeat him and retain his belt. And then I think Canelo moves on and fights Terrence Crawford later in the year, and if it's at the end of the year, and I think he beats him as well. Canelo ends the year as the super champ. David Morrell, will he end the year as the regular champ? I'm going to say yes. I think the WBA will allow him to stay there if he wants to, even after his August light heavyweight debut. You know what? I'm changing that. I think he's not going to be the regular champion anymore, because I think he's giving that belt up after he makes his light heavyweight debut, because he's going to have more options at 175. So I'm going to say no, he does not end the year as the regular champion. Canelo will be the lone super middleweight champ at 168. 175 light heavyweight. Dimitri Bivol is your current champion. Will he end the year as WBA champion? My bold prediction is yes. I think Bivol will return to, I think Bivol is going to defeat Artur Beterbiev in October and become the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world and retain his belt and end the year as the WBA and undisputed light heavyweight champion. 200 cruiserweight. Gilberto Ramirez is the current champion. Will he end the year as the light heavyweight champion, or as the cruiserweight champion? My bold prediction is yes. I think Ramirez is going to fight Chris Billum Smith later in the year in a title unification bout, and I believe he will defeat him by a decision, and then I believe Gilberto Ramirez will end the year as your WBO and WBA unified cruiserweight champion of the world, and that's it for him. And then finally at heavyweight, we have two champions. Will Alexander Usyk end the year as the heavyweight super champion? My bold prediction is no. I think he's going to lose that belt in a rematch to Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury will end the year as champion. And then finally, my final prediction is on Mahmoud Char. Will he end the year as regular champ? I think if Char fights Kubrat Pulev, I guess Char wins. I really don't care about this belt, but I'm going to say yes, he ends the year as regular champ. And that's it. That is my WBA mid-year champions report. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.